Hello again, everybody. So we got a good one for you today. I've been working on this one a lot. And essentially what we're going to be doing is going over how the RNG works in Pokemon Legends Arceus. And that's a very broad topic, right? And when I say the RNG, I mean the random number generator. And so every single Pokemon in the game is beholden to this random number generator. And so if we want to understand what the best way to hunt every type of Pokemon is in the game, it helps to understand how the system that governs that works. So I'm going to walk through it here today in full. I'm going to walk through every type of spawn, every single different type of Pokemon and all the different quirks, and then land on sort of an optimal way to hunt whatever target you might be interested in. I'm going to start from literally square one. So you don't have to know anything about, random number generators or coding or how the game works. We're going to explain it literally from nothing. And we're going to start off with what is a random number generator, right? Well, it's actually a misnomer. And what it really is a pseudo random number generator. A fun quirk of basically all computers is that they have a really hard time generating anything that's purely random because they are, bits, ones and zeros. They work in a very sequential way. And so programmers have to come up with a system that allows you to generate something that's like random, but not truly random. And so they're actually called pseudo random number generators, or pRNGs. We just lop the P off. The P is implied because people who do this a lot, saying pRNG is one syllable longer than saying RNG. So from here on out, I'm just going to call it the RNG, but you can assume that it's a pRNG. So at a base level, how does a random number generator work? And it's really a pretty simple idea when you look at it in like these three main steps. So the first thing that a random number generator does is it takes in a seed value. In the case of Legends Arceus, it takes in a 64-bit seed value, like one of these numbers we see here. And so what does this thing do? It takes in this seed value, it performs a consistent and repeatable series of math operations on that seed, what we call an algorithm, and then it applies that algorithm to the seed and then spits out a unique number line of values that won't repeat until we've seen all the possibilities. So this creates a really nice thing for something like Pokemon, right? It ensures that Pokemon 1 is unique from Pokemon 2 and Pokemon 3 and Pokemon 4 and so on. And that, that's really useful. And every single Pokemon game uses some form of this, but they all don't work in exactly the same way. If you want to learn more about how other RNG mechanisms in other games work, stick around, hit like, subscribe, but let's go on to what Arceus does when it decides how to populate a map with Pokemon. So the map is actually, it has its own seed, and then every single Pokemon spawner on the map. And so like, if I bring up a picture of this map here, this is courtesy of SciresM. He's a data miner and switch modder and many other things. He produced this nice little image of sort of what a Pokemon spawner is. And it's like a little dot with a radius that can spawn Pokemon inside it. And it actually functions very similar to a Sword and Shield raid den. And if you remember, Sword and Shield raid dens, they have a Pokemon and then you advance to the next day and they have a different Pokemon, and you advance to the next day and they have another Pokemon. And so since they all function the same way, it was really easy for the developers and data miners to look at it and figure out how this thing functions. And so every single Pokemon spawner on the map is going to receive one of these seed values. They all have their own little algorithm that they run on, and a seed gets put into them, and then they take that seed and they determine the list of Pokemon that can emerge from there. So as soon as you leave JUBILIFE City and go to, say, Coronet Highlands, the game has a seed stored, and it goes, hey, what are the next 235 seeds in this list? And we're going to populate all the spawners with those, and it goes through and it populates all the spawners. And so what does this mean? It means that every single Pokemon that's on the map, as soon as you load in, is predetermined. So there's no like, oh, I walked up to this Snorunt and then I left and I came back later, it's a different Snorunt. No. That Snorunt is exactly the same every time until you kill or capture it. So these Pokemon spawners, they come in some different types. And so let's look at the different types of these spawners. So there's single Pokemon spawners, which is the most common one that you see. There's alpha Pokemon spawners, which are kind of the same as single Pokemon spawners, except they have slightly different rules and they only spawn alpha Pokemon. And then there are multi-Pokemon spawners, which govern, some regular spawners, but mostly outbreaks. And so those mass outbreaks that you see, they run on these multi-Pokemon spawners. And then space-time rifts actually have two different types of spawners in them. They have single Pokemon spawners and multi-Pokemon spawners, and we'll get to that later. let's focus right now on just a single Pokemon spawner. So what a single Pokemon spawner does is it takes in that seed value that happens when you load into the map, and it goes to the first Pokemon in the list. So in this case, we have Advance 1, which is this A65B, and that's going to produce this docile SHINX, right? And as soon as you load into the map, you just landed in Obsidian Fieldlands, and boom, you see a SHINX, and it's this first SHINX. So then let's say you caught that SHINX. You know what's going to happen? So you've caught the SHINX. The game has despawned the SHINX, and now the spawner is without a Pokemon. And so when the spawner says, "Oh shoot, I don't have a Pokemon," what it does is it goes to the next advance in the list. In this case, now the seed that is stored in the spawner is this BAFE seed. And so then the spawner is now sort of in a state of waiting, right? The spawner is now waiting for something to happen so it can spawn a new Pokemon. What causes new Pokemon to spawn? There are two criteria that cause Pokemon to spawn. Number one is there needs to be a time change. So for example, if you sleep from midday to nightfall, it'll spawn a new Pokemon. Or if you were to just wait by a spawner for, day to turn to night, a Pokemon will pop up there. And you just have to be within range of it for that to happen. And this is a really important thing that we can use to do some fun tricks. And that's that if you don't walk in the range of a spawner, it doesn't actually spawn the Pokemon. And so you can actually change the species of that Pokemon. And we'll talk about how that might happen. So what determines a Pokemon species? Well, basically the RNG rolls a dice with 100 sides. So before we were talking about how these seeds have, seed 1, seed 2, seed 3. And the RNG algorithm works in such a way that you can pass it one of those seeds and you can tell it, hey, give me a number between 0 and X. And it'll give you a pseudo random number result for that. And so when the game wants to decide what species a Pokemon is, it takes that seed and it rolls a die with 100 or more sides depending on the spawner, the time of day, and the weather. And so for example, like this spawner in Obsidian Fieldlands that can sometimes spawn Chimchar. In the morning during sunny weather, it's 58% of the time it's going to produce a Starly, 28.84% of the time it's going to make a Staravia, 7% it's going to make a Chimchar, 3.5% it's going to make a Monferno, and then the alphas are actually considered different species. So for all those random alpha spawns that happen out on the map, they are really just a dice roll that happens when a Pokemon spawns. And it'll always be the same. It's not like you can reset your game and then, oh, that Snorunt turned into an alpha. No. If it was going to be an alpha Snorunt, it would be an alpha Snorunt every time. So the fact that it varies based on time of day and weather, though, produces some really interesting phenomena. And you may have seen videos and clips of this going around, which is that you can change the species of like a shiny Pokemon. And I've set this up in my game, and I will show you a little example of that now. There you go. So this shiny Bibarel could also be something completely different. What I got to do is I got to reset, and then I come here and I say, okay, I need to respawn it. And so I'm going to sleep till nightfall, and there it is. So there's the shiny Bibarel that we saw before, but this time it's a shiny Haunter. So that's a pretty cool trick, right? Depending on what time of day you approach a spawner, you can, maybe check and see if you can get a different species for that. It's not going to be a different species every time, but the fact that you can do that is pretty cool. You might, just like me, not really need a shiny Bibarel, but a shiny Haunter, that's pretty pog. And so let's move on to alpha Pokemon spawners. And the nice thing is we don't have to spend a lot of time on alpha Pokemon spawners because they're almost exactly the same as single Pokemon spawners, except for one key difference. And that's that alpha Pokemon spawners require 3 time changes to respawn rather than just 1. So if you wanted to respawn an alpha for whatever reason, you just killed it and you want to see a new one, you'll get to the next one in the list by sleeping. Assuming it's nighttime, you'd sleep from night to midday, and then you'd sleep from midday to nightfall, and then you'd sleep from nightfall to midday again. And then when you go back to the spawner, the alpha would be there. So that's pretty neat. I wouldn't recommend hunting alphas this way because there's a faster way to hunt alphas, and we'll get to that later. But first, let's talk about shiny Pokemon. The reason everybody is here. Why, oh why does Pokemon A turn shiny and Pokemon B does not? Well, the answer to that lies once again in our wonderful RNG algorithm. And so when the game is deciding whether or not a Pokemon is going to be shiny, it rolls a die with sides 1 to 4096. That's the base shiny odds, 1 in 4096. And this isn't exactly how it works, but you can imagine if you roll the die and it lands on a 1, that Pokemon is shiny. And it'll be shiny every time because the seed that determines whether or not the roll is shiny is the same seed that the Pokemon is based on. But the game has some slight tweaks to that in that we can get very, very high boosted shiny rates. And so thanks to Anubis and various other data miners, we have this great piece of data in front of us here that shows us what all the different shiny odds are, depending on what situation you're in, your dex research, whether you have the shiny charm, and whether or not it's an outbreak. And you'll see there's that column that says shiny rolls. And what the shiny rolls are literally multiple rolls of that dice. And so if you're in a mass outbreak and you have the shiny charm and your dex research is perfect, you actually get to roll that die 32 times every time a Pokemon spawns. So that is why you get way more shinies in Outbreaks, because every single time a Pokemon spawns, before the game has determined whether or not it's shiny, it needs to roll this dice 32 times. And so that's pretty sick. You have a way higher odds of getting a 1 if you roll something 32 times than if you roll it 1 time, right? And so that brings us to what is the best way to hunt these natural Pokemon spawns. So single Pokemon spawners. Like I said before, every single Pokemon spawner is assigned a seed and locked in when you load into the map. And so in a way, if you're not checking every single spawner on the map, you're missing shinies. You're leaving shinies out there that you could have just flown to and checked. Now, that doesn't mean it's necessarily efficient to check every single spawner on the map. Really, when it comes to hunting shinies, you're trying to max encounters per hour. And so if you're spending time going around the map trying to see every single spawner, you're going to be seeing multiple spawners multiple times because there's not like one clean route that can cover the whole map. But you can come up with a route that covers all the targets that you might be interested in. And, you know, anything else along the way is just gravy, right? And so this is what I've been doing is, first and foremost, you disable autosave. If you're going to be shiny hunting, I really highly recommend disabling autosave because it gives you the power to basically never fail a shiny, right? And so what you're going to do is you're going to sleep to day or night, depending on what your target is. So you just left JUBILIFE, you landed on the map, and the first thing I would do is I would sleep to the time of day that you know your target needs to be on. Like some Pokemon are night exclusive, some Pokemon are day exclusive. So get that right first. And then once you do that, save immediately. And then once you've saved here, you are not going to save again. And then what you're going to do is you're going to do your route. And I have a route that I do for Alabaster Icelands. So after you've checked the map and flown over all your desired spawns, if you don't have any shinies, just head back to JUBILIFE Village and then come back again and then repeat from step 2. If you fail a shiny along the way, so let's say you find a shiny and you try to catch it, you could try to save as soon as, like, you know, the shiny pops. Oh man, I gotta save. I would recommend not doing that because you don't need to do that. You just have to reload your camp save and then fly back to that spot. And then the bonus that you get as a result of doing that is that you could actually sleep to a different time of day and maybe change the species like I showed earlier. And that's sick, right? That's super cool. So we will move on to outbreaks themselves. So one of the most frustrating things about mass outbreaks is that you don't get to pick where they show up and you don't get to pick what species they have. And that can be very frustrating if you want to get a specific Hisuian form, if you're hunting a very specific target, and you know that these outbreaks are by far the best way because, like we said, we have those plus 32 shiny rolls, right? Like that's crazy. Those odds are insane. And so what do we got to do to get an outbreak for the species that we want? Well, thankfully, I did some testing on this myself, and then it was later confirmed by Kurt, who is one of the developers of PK Hex, that there is a 20% chance for outbreaks to be despawned when you leave JUBILIFE. And then when you return to JUBILIFE from a map, there's a 20% chance that a new outbreak is created on each map or replaced if it's already there. So what that means is 80% of the time, your outbreak will remain in place when returning to JUBILIFE. And so the best way, unfortunately, to change the species of an outbreak is just to keep entering a map that has a target that you want and leaving and going back to JUBILIFE and then returning to the map over and over again. And my testing showed this time and time again that 80% of the time the Pokemon would stay the same, and then 20% of the time it would either change species or the outbreak would disappear. There's really no more efficient way to do it than that. You just, I want to get Hisuian Braviary. I'm going to keep traveling back and forth to Alabaster Icelands until I get Rufflet or Hisuian Braviary outbreak, and that's really all there is to it. So now let's talk about the RNG of outbreaks. And this has been a very, very hot topic lately. There have been a lot of videos, a lot of guides, a lot of speculation, and a lot of testing that have gone into figuring out how these outbreaks work. Does killing matter? Does capturing matter? Does multi-battling matter? Does it matter if they run away or blah, 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 blah? We're gonna cover all that here. So looking at this outbreak spawner diagram that I've made, it's very, very similar to the single outbreak spawner, but like I said, it's a multi-Pokemon spawner, and so it works a little differently. So just like a regular outbreak spawner, it has a seed value, and the seed value doesn't just determine the next Pokemon, it determines the first 4 Pokemon that spawn. So when you travel to the map, the Outbreak RNG has its own seed, and from that seed, it's gonna go, okay, we're gonna advance 1, 2, 3, 4 times, and we're gonna plop 4 SHINX in there. You know, every time you reload your save, those 4 SHINX are going to be exactly the same. Now, the unique thing here is that the advances don't progress 1, 2, 3, 4. It actually takes the seed, it spawns the 4 Pokemon, and then it actually reseeds itself with the seed of the 4th Pokemon. So the RNG literally goes, okay, what's the last Pokemon I made? I made Pokemon number 4. What was the seed for Pokemon number 4? It was this 8771. And then that is going to be the input into the Outbreak RNG that then gets reseeded, so it gets a brand new seed. And then as soon as you kill or capture or one of the Pokemon flee, it's going to spawn a Pokemon from that seed. So this sort of reveals the best method right away for hunting these, and I'll explain why it's the best method, but let's do a quick walkthrough of the best method to hunt Outbreak Pokemon right now. And this is the 1x1 method, and this is a way to trick the system into making outbreaks work just like single Pokemon spawners, so that you're getting a new unique Pokemon every single time. And so the flow of events for that is you've gone back and forth to JUBILIFE until you got the exact outbreak you want, and then you're going to travel there, and then you're going to save your game at camp immediately, and then you're not going to save again even if a shiny appears. And like before, I'll explain to you why you wouldn't do that, but let's carry on through the steps. So then we're going to travel to the outbreak, we're going to catch the Pokemon 1x1, or if it's a skittish Pokemon, you can just let them run away 1x1, like Eevee or Basculin or some of the starters. They'll just run away if you get on the deer and run around in circles. They'll just bail. And that's exactly the same as if you were to battle them 1x1 or catch them 1x1. So that's by far the fastest if you have a skittish Pokemon. So like it says here, killing or catching a Pokemon in a single battle is okay. The Pokemon spawns will be repeatable, and if you were to reload your save and repeat those steps again, which is just catching each Pokemon 1x1, making them flee 1x1, the shiny will spawn again exactly the same, and it's perfectly repeatable, and so there's no reason to save as soon as a shiny spawns. In fact, if you save as soon as a shiny spawn, there's actually a chance that it'll disappear when you go there if it's too late in the chain. So there's actually a chance you load into an outbreak and just said the reported Pokemon appear to be gone, and then oh, I lost my shiny. So highly recommend only saving at camp when you're doing outbreak hunting, and then if you fail a shiny, just reload and repeat the steps again. The only time this changes is if you kill or catch Pokemon in a multi-battle scenario. So this will only aggressive Pokemon like SHINX will allow this to happen. But if you get into a multi-battle and say you get into a battle with 3 SHINX and you kill 2 of them and catch 1 of them, then like I said before, it's going to reseed after spawning 3 SHINX. So it's going to go, it's going to spawn 3 SHINX, and now SHINX number 3's seed is going to reseed the outbreak spawner, and you're going to get completely different Pokemon than if you'd caught by 1, respawn, caught by 1, reseed, respawn, caught by 1, reseed, respawn, right? If you don't follow that pattern, things get a little wiggly. And so, yeah, and if you don't find a shiny, you reload your camp save, you return to JUBILIFE Village, and you repeat from step 1. And if you do find a shiny, like I said, just reload your camp save if you fail it, and you can catch it again. Now, there's a little weird quirk in my diagram here, and you'll see that SHINX number 5, it's a duplicate of the very first SHINX after you return to JUBILIFE and then return. And you might think, well, that's weird. You told me this is the best way to see unique Pokemon, but I'm seeing this one duplicate anytime, and I'm telling you that this is the least duplicates you could possibly see. Any other way will cause you to see way more duplicates, and we'll go over why that happens now. So what happens when we return to JUBILIFE, right? So we've done the outbreak, we didn't get a shiny, we closed our game, we reloaded our save, and we're back at camp. I need to get a new outbreak. So we go back to JUBILIFE. 80% of the time, outbreak's gonna stay, and you can go right back to the same outbreak, and then you go back to the same outbreak, you save at camp, and you go and check it again. What did the game do during that time? Well, what it actually did is it despawned those 4 SHINX simultaneously, and when it does that, it now needs to spawn 4 new Pokemon. And so when you travel back to the map, it goes, okay, we need to spawn 4 new Pokemon, so it goes right from the seed that it was on, and it goes, it spawns 4, and then it reseeds. And that means that the state that the RNG is in when it spawns SHINX number 5 is exactly the same as it was when you just killed one SHINX, right? It was on the seed of SHINX number 4, and then SHINX number 5 spawns because one got despawned. And that happens exactly the same if all 4 despawn at the same time, because the game always spawns before it reseeds. And so that is why SHINX number 5 is a duplicate, because the Outbreak RNG is in the exact same state when you catch one of the SHINX as it would be when it spawns the first new SHINX on the next day. So now why, I mentioned that multi-battles make things more inconsistent. Let's really dive into that and show why that happens. Let's say you got into a multi-battle with some SHINX and you killed 2 of them in the multi-battle. What is the Outbreak RNG gonna do? The Outbreak RNG says, oh, I need 2 new Pokemon. It's gonna be on the same seed that it would have been. No matter how many you kill, it's gonna go, it's gonna spawn 2, and that puts us at SHINX number 6. And then SHINX number 6's seed is gonna go into the RNG and it's gonna reseed based on that. And this is a common pattern, right? So then what happens when you despawn 3 Pokemon? It's the same kind of thing. It goes, spawns 3 SHINX, and now it's gonna reseed with the seed of SHINX number 7, the 3rd SHINX that respawned instead of seed number 6. And then the final scenario, you might be like, well, okay, there's only one scenario left. What happens if I kill all 4 SHINX? And the answer is, it does the exact same thing as if you'd return to JUBILIFE. You will see the exact same 4 Pokemon. If you were to go up to an aggressive Pokemon, get into a 4 Pokemon multi-battle and kill all 4 of them. And if you saw my last video, I demonstrated this trick exactly, right? Like, I went into an Outbreak, I caught the Sneasel 1 by 1, and I didn't get a shiny. And then I killed 4 Sneasel in a multi-battle, and then I did get a shiny. Then I reloaded my save, went back to JUBILIFE, came back again, and that exact same shiny Sneasel was in the initial spawns on the next day. I say day, but it's not really a day. It's like the next seed advancement. So it's not based on like time of day. Just think of it like a day of travel going back to JUBILIFE and then coming back to the Outbreak. So that actually brings us to what I like to call the SHINX matrix. So this is an explanation of all the different unique SHINX that you could see if you were going to engage in all of these different scenarios. So if you were to load into the Outbreak and then go catch everything one by one, assuming it's a 10 SHINX Outbreak, you'd see your first 4 spawns. The 5th one is a duplicate no matter what, which we've already covered. And then you'd get SHINX number 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and they would all be unique. Now, if you were to kill 2 of the first 4 SHINX and then proceed one by one from there, you would actually see 4 brand new SHINX. You'd see 5 brand new SHINX, but the one of them would be a duplicate from going back to JUBILIFE and coming to the next day. But you could see 4 unique SHINX and find a shiny here. It's completely different, and because you did it in a repeatable way, you could see it again. But like I said, it's not necessarily efficient because you are seeing the first 4 again. Those are duplicates, and you're seeing a couple spawns that are going to be identical to if you'd just gone back to JUBILIFE and proceeded. And the same is true of multi-killing 3, and then multi-killing 4, just like the scenario we talked about before, causes the exact same SHINX to appear as if you just reloaded and gone back to JUBILIFE. So that's the SHINX matrix, and I had a theory that there might be a method for hunting that is equal or more efficient than the 1-by-1 method, and I kind of covered it in the last video, but I didn't really make any claims about how effective or efficient it would be. I just thought of it as like a cool mix-up, and I can say with pretty high confidence now that it's not the most efficient way to hunt, and the 1-by-1 method is going to be way more consistent. You're going to get way more encounters per hour going that way than spending time getting into multi-battles and killing these aggressive Pokemon. In theory, right, if you had been Outbreak hunting forever and you were like, oh man, I want to try some different seeds, you could, emphasis on the could, try multi-killing 2 or 3 in the first battle and then proceeding them from there to get some other unique seeds. It's not going to be any more effective than the 1-by-1 method because you're not going to be seeing any more unique Pokemon, but it's an option. It's an option, right? I wouldn't recommend it, but it is indeed an option. So that brings us to alpha Pokemon and Outbreaks. Alpha Pokemon are a big thing. Everybody's trying to hunt shiny alpha Pokemon. And how are alphas determined in Outbreaks? We covered how they happen in single Pokemon spawners. It's a dice roll, and any of the species that are in the spawner can be an alpha. But with the Outbreak, it's similar, but not exactly the same. So every single Outbreak is going to roll a die with sides 1 to 101, and 1 to 100 it's going to spawn a normal Pokemon, and if it gets a 101 it's going to spawn an alpha of that Pokemon, and that'll be the same every time. So if your shiny isn't an alpha, it's never going to be an alpha unless this one tiny caveat happens, and that is if you already had an alpha that was in the Outbreak. So Anubis did some testing on this, and we finally got confirmation that you can't have 2 alphas in an Outbreak at the same time. And I will play the video here of what they're doing while I'm talking over it. And basically what it is that if there's an alpha on screen already, it will not spawn another alpha, and it'll actually just spawn a regular version of that Pokemon. So there's actually a hard-coded check that says, am I about to spawn an alpha? Oh, is there already an alpha present? Oh, there is. Just don't make it alpha, just make it a regular one. And that happens here in this video. Anubis is hunting these Zorua, and there's an alpha Zorua on screen, and so the shiny Zorua isn't alpha, but if they catch or KO the first alpha, the second one does show up alpha. So you're not manipulating it. If there is a shiny alpha in your Outbreak, it will always be a shiny alpha if and only if there is not already an alpha from that Outbreak on screen. And that's really all you need to know about it. So if you're hunting Outbreaks and you're specifically looking for alpha shinies, and you get a shiny in your Outbreak and you left a alpha sitting around because it's a pain in the ass to fight it, I would highly recommend globbing it and taking care of it, because if you get a shiny spawn, it could have been an alpha, but you wouldn't know because the alpha wouldn't spawn. And that's really the last caveat of Outbreaks. And that brings us to our final Pokemon in the game. Every Pokemon that can be shiny in the game, you can hunt with either Outbreaks or alpha spawners or regular just flying over the map, except for the forgotten few. We've got Sneasel and Weavile in Obsidian Fieldlands. We've got the Porygon line and the Cyndaquil line in Crimson Mirelands. We've got Magneton and Magnemite on the Cobalt Coastlands. We've got the fossil Pokemon and Rowlet at Coronet Highlands. And then we've got young Oshawott here as the standalone exclusive shiny in Alabaster Icelands. So if you want to get a shiny of one of these Pokemon, none of these other methods will work for you, and you need the most efficient way to hunt for space-time distortions. Now, how does space-time distortions work? Well, once again, Anubis has done the legwork, Kurt as well. These guys are always so helpful when it comes to the mechanics of new games, and I am infinitely grateful to them for helping us. So what happens with distortions? Well, distortions have a 5-minute check as soon as you load into a map. So you've just loaded into the map, and then at 5 minutes, you've been there for 5 minutes, there's a check. The game's gonna roll a dice, and it's gonna be like, all right, am I spawning a rift? Yes or no? If no, it waits another 5 minutes, and then it rolls the dice again. And every 5 minutes you wait, it gets a little bit more likely to spawn a rift up until 40 minutes, when it becomes 100% likely that a rift will spawn. So it's almost always better to just stay on the map and let the timer run to spawn a rift. Now, there are things that can cause this timer to stop, and those are battles and being in your menu. So if you're in your menu or you're in battles a lot, you could see yourself being out there for longer than 20, 30, 40 minutes. And so it's recommended that you really only catch Pokemon out in the overworld. That's not going to interfere with it. But if you are getting into battles and you're messing around in your boxes and your menus and your crafting items and whatever, that's all pausing the timer. And so unfortunately, that is the best way to get distortions, is just to wait. I know it's not ideal, but it's the best we can do. And then the other neat thing about distortions that we need to know is that they're actually impeded by extreme weather. So intense sun, snowstorms, and thunderstorms will actually cause the game to just not spawn a distortion. And so if you load into a map and there's a thunderstorm happening, sleep. Just go to your camp and sleep until that weather goes away and you're just on like a normal, regular day, and then proceed to do your distortion waiting from there. And you can see we've got a little table from Anubis as well that covers the odds of any individual weather happening and the time range for how long that weather might last. So what's the best way to hunt for shiny space-time exclusives? Well, first, obviously, you're going to need to travel to the map that has your target species. And like we discussed, you're going to make sure that the weather isn't extreme and you can sleep to change that weather. And then you're going to just avoid any battling or being in the menus for 40 minutes. And, likely it's going to spawn at 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, but it's always beneficial to just wait for the 40 minutes because you have a guaranteed spawn of a rift at 40 minutes. And then once that rift spawns, you can just go to the rift site and then wait there until it starts. It's actually a random amount of time until it starts, but it will start and you can't control that amount of time, so you just need to wait. And then once the rift starts, you're just going to hop on your deer and you're going to ride around until you see your 3 exclusive spawns. So within each space-time rift, there are 2 sets of spawners. Like I mentioned, there's single Pokemon spawners and multi-Pokemon spawners. The exclusive spawns for each map will only spawn in the single spawner spawners, and there are only 3 of them per rift. You cannot get 4. There's only going to be 3. So if you hop into a rift and you see 3 Porygons in Crimson Mirelands, it's done. You're not going to see any more. You can just leave. Just go back to JUBILIFE and then repeat the process. And that's really all there is to it. And that's really it. That covers all the spawns in the game. That covers all the different hunting methods. I really appreciate everybody watching this today. I know it was pretty in depth. I know we went over a lot, and this was a lot of work. And so I would really, really recommend hitting like if you made it to this point. Definitely subscribe. You know, I'm climbing a lot faster than I ever thought I would. It seems like people are actually pretty interested in how Pokemon games work, if you can believe it. And I'm happy I can help you guys learn a little bit more about what's going on behind the scenes in your favorite Pokemon games. I am full-time at this right now, so every view, every click, every like makes me more likely to make enough money to keep doing this full-time. And I also stream on Twitch. Throw me a follow on Twitch if you want to hang out with me and play Pokemon games. I do a lot of fun stuff. Once again, thanks for watching. Peace.